can't do this by yourself. You can't learn everything by yourself.
Most pilots don't understand what career opportunities are available in the world of aviation. They're making career decisions based on advice from friends or posts on internet forums, meaning they are taking huge risks with their livelihood without having all the details. This podcast was created to help you understand the aviation industry so you can find your dream job. Let's get ready for Pushback. Here's your host and my dad, Nick Fialka.
Hey, pilots, what's up? It's Nick. You're here. Another great interview at Ready for Pushback. Today, I'm talking to Miss Brenda Robinson from the Aviation Camps of the Carolinas. She is an amazing human who has a great story. I cannot wait for you to hear this story, but I want to tell you a little bit about all the great things that Aviation Camps of the Carolinas do. They are a great thoroughfare for people who have children who are looking to get into aviation. Get kids out of the classroom, get them hands-on experience to see what it's like to be a part of aviation and all the different facets. If you have a kid and you are interested in aviation, or your kiddo is interested in aviation, it's a great episode for you. If you are a pilot and you are looking to volunteer or provide some insight, anything you can to just outreach, help, increase your feeling of self-worth and the opportunities, resume building or something like that, go for it. Reach out. They're always looking for volunteers to do really great things with kids. This is one of my favorite conversations, so enjoy. And last but not least, let's have a quick word from our sponsors, because without them, we wouldn't have this awesome podcast. Hey, pilot, did you just get a new conditional job offer? Are you getting out of the military and going to move your family across the country? Are you going to move in base somewhere, or are you going to go out to find that second home that you've been looking for? Well, I want you to stop right now, pick up the phone, and call Marty and the team at Trident Home Loans. It's an organization that's run by pilots. They understand pilot pay. They understand contracts. They understand military. They have the best VA loans in the United States. Marty and his team have been doing mortgages for years. They've been doing my mortgages for years. I trust him and his team more than any other organization. I challenge you to get a better deal anywhere else. Go ahead, reach out, get a mortgage quote, and then call Marty and his team. They will walk you through the process and show you how competitive their rates are. So go right now, tridenthomeloans.com, and check them out. Hey, pilot, I want to tell you about a great friend of the show, Timothy P. Pope. He's a financial planner, and he's completely focused on the professional pilot. He's the kind of guy you want to go to for real talk to help you figure out your financial future. With so many upgrades and so many transitions and so many things going on, you owe it to yourself to give him a call. He'll help you design and execute really smart financial planning strategies, whether it's retirement planning, investment management, military transition, tax planning. He's a great financial planning partner. Timothy P. Pope, CFP, helping professional pilots make the most out of life. Give him a shout. All the information's in the show notes. You should definitely tell him I told you to call. All right, here we are. I have Brenda Robinson here. Brenda, how are you today?
I'm doing great, and I'm so pleased that you have invited him to talk to me. This is very nice.
This is a special, special treat for me. And our mutual friend Shannon reached out and was like, listen, you got to talk to Brenda. And this is what it's all about. This is, for me, a very exciting thing. First off, because you're a fellow naval aviator.
Right. And you can't see this, but I was so excited to see that Nick is wearing a flight suit. I was like, I should have had my flight suit on. This is wonderful. Oh, it's a member of an exclusive club.
That's right. Yeah, I'm recording on Tuesdays, and Tuesday is a uniform day where I'm working in the reserves.
Yeah.
Listen, Brenda is very special. She is a groundbreaker for a lot of people, and she was the first African-American naval aviator ever. And I would love for you to tell us the story about kind of how that came to be.
Well, I had to say that somebody ever asked my father, says like, how did Brenda get into aviation? What was the connection? And my father would look at them in straight face and go, I have no idea. I don't know where she got that from. But I was always interested in aviation, but not paper airplanes. I would not build models. That wasn't it. take a trip to the airport. I lived outside of Philadelphia. Take a trip to the Philadelphia airport, pick up a passenger that was coming in to visit us. And then you could go all the way to the gate and they would push the stairs up to the airplane and you would walk down the stairs. And I would watch them walk down the stairs and I was like, that's the glamour life. That's what I want to do for a living. I want to be on that airplane all the time. So I thought back then, and I was just a little kid, I would run up the stairs and turn right and do my job, in an airplane. As it turns out, I run up the stairs and turn left to do my job from the cockpit in the airplane and flying it. But that is what got me interested in leaving the earth and flying around. And that's what I wanted to do. Well, women didn't fly airplanes at the time. At least I didn't know that they did. History doesn't tell you everything all the time, right?
You didn't have Wikipedia back then?
Yeah, I know, right? I still have encyclopedias in my house. Yeah. So when you say, you want to, I never even said I wanted to be a pilot because it just didn't even cross my mind. I did want to be a secretary on the moon, and my teachers had a problem with that. And so they asked my parents what the deal was. But anyway, when I finally got to 12th grade, I had some field trips. Got to go to an airport, saw an air traffic control tower, and it was like 1 minute later, I'm like, don't talk to me anymore because what I see right now is everything I ever want to do for the rest of my life. I was going to be an air traffic controller. That was it. I said, okay, where do I need to go to college to become an air traffic controller? Oh, you don't have to go to college for that. And I go, my dad says I'm going to college, so you might as well just point the way and I'll go there whether he knows that it will need it or not. And so I went on to Dowling College and pursued a Bachelor's of Science degree in aeronautics. I'm not messing around. And while I was there, flight training, private pilot's license was an add-on. The college didn't sponsor it, but they were connected to it. So I said, Dad, well, I want to learn how to fly. He's like, okay. So I ended up flying too. So I got my private pilot's license. But one thing I'm not doing is I'm not going into the military. I promise you that. Not doing it. So when all the military shows up to talk to the aviation students once a year, I'm in my dorm room because I'm not going. So apparently the dean sent somebody up to knock on my door and make me come down to this meeting where I did, in fact, sit there and listen to everybody's spiel about coming into their services in order to fly. But most folks, they looked at me and go, well, we don't take women. It's like, I don't even know why you're here. But the Navy and the Air Force said that they would take women. Air Force said you have to come in, do something else, a couple of years, we'll put your paperwork in, blah, blah, blah. And the Navy said, if you can get through basic training, you go straight to flight school. And I was essentially overqualified, and I took that job. The reason I say overqualified is because the guys had to have a science degree, and it didn't matter in what. And they didn't have to have any flight background. So I had to have a science degree, had some flight background. I had my private pilot's license. I couldn't have been more qualified for this position. They took 10 women a year from the nation in the Navy. So they did that for like a couple of years. So that must have been, we're in the 10s or 20s by the time I was going through there. There were 3 women in my whole battalion, in my class. My battalion, mostly guys. So we started out with 32 guys and 3 women, and we ended up with 17 total students.
Wow.
3 women.
That's pretty amazing.
That's pretty much how I stepped into it. Yeah.
Okay. It was basic training, or it was like AOCS, or where did you guys do that?
Yeah, I call it basic training, but it was AOCS.
Got it.
We were 90-day wonders.
Were you in Pensacola for that?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Pensacola.
Run the seawall. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. So AOCS, for those of you that don't know, AOCS is Aviation Officer Candidate School, which teaches you how to be an officer. You march around, you get yelled at, you shine stuff, and you are in the Pensacola brutal heat, and it's misery, and like everybody quits. And that's where Officer and Gentleman came from too, as well, right?
That's right. They welcome you to quit. Yes.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They love for you to quit.
They want you out of here. Yeah. They would love you to quit.
So all 3 of you, that was so interesting when you started saying 10 or 20 a year. In my mind, I was like, yeah, 10 or 20 ladies in flight school, that's pretty good. And you're like, no, like in the Navy. And
in the whole Navy.
Gosh, like that's the perspective.
And they didn't want to put us in separately. So we all had to wait till September for all 10 of us to go in at the same time.
You just sat around?
They divided us, yes, but we were stashed. we were in the Navy somewhere doing something.
What was your job? What was your stash job?
Recruiting, of course. Ugh. They put me in the recruiting office in Philadelphia. But then...
In Philly?
I got the... Yeah.
Back home.
But then I got them to send me to Memphis to air traffic control school.
No kidding.
I was so thrilled. Oh my God. Yeah, I was just super happy about that. So I got to work the scopes and radar, and it was just all class. So I graduated as an officer that could go to be a manager at any of the air traffic control facilities. So,
man, okay, from the pilot point of view,
that was wonderful.
Yeah, from the pilot point of view, like that gives you such good perspective. First off, you're already a pilot. You are already, let me tell you what, you're more qualified than I am. I don't have a science degree, not at all. I was never, ever in an airplane. I did one 15-minute flight in a pit special when I was 15 years old, and that is it. Yeah. And you're a private pilot. You're can control aircraft. You know all the things. What great perspective. No wonder you crushed flight school.
No. Flight school, I was a genius for the first 6 flights. A genius. But that was actually what I needed to get my foot in the door, because the rest of it was very hard. But I already had a basis. My basics were down. So I did manage to get through that. It was still hard work. Funny. It's oh my goodness. This is easy. This is great, and it's ugh.
Where did you go through flight school? What squadron were you in? Do you remember?
I think it was VT, whichever wasn't the Marines. It was VT2 or VT3.
Okay.
So I went through as a student. I came back as an instructor years later to VT6.
Yes, me too.
So I was teaching those students who are brand new, have never touched an airplane.
Now,
they were just as cute as anything.
Did you learn in a T-34 or a T-28?
Yeah, I learned in a T-34. I have some Navy friends that we're lifelong friends. We're all retired now, and we still stick together. But when I was down there, I'm thinking, I should go and fly the T-28. They're like, no, you're not flying the T-28. You're getting your butt into the T-34.
That's right.
I was even looking at, I could go into helos when I get done. I'm like, no, you're not going to helos. I had jet grades, but they weren't taking women in a jet. So I had to go fixed wing. So I didn't know how lovely that was. So, but when I got, I got through that. That was really hard. Fixed wing was hard for me. 2 flights a day, and it's all kinds of commotion and drama that went on with that. So that was difficult. But I got my wings.
Man. And so, okay, first off, were you aware that you were the first African-American woman going through the program?
Yeah, the funny thing is the recruiters told me that. The recruiters told me, well, we're going to send you down to Pensacola and show you what you're going to have to deal with, basic training. They did that with the women because they didn't want us to get into hysterics. Oh. So it was I looked at them and I go, well, that's really kind of you, but I don't want you to spend money on sending me all the way down. Is it you let us worry about it? But what they were actually doing, and they told me this, is that you are the first Black woman to do this. They could check 2 boxes because affirmative action was big then. Everybody hates the word affirmative action, but you had to be overqualified in order even to get into that slot.
Yeah.
So there's we're checking 2 boxes off. You're a minority because that was new, and you're female, and that's new. So they told me that, and I'm like, oh, this is great. That's cool. But I never really considered that a thing, because if I go down to Pensacola and wash out, if I even get as far as flight school and wash out, nobody would even know my name. So having the big head about being the first, I couldn't spend 1 second worrying about that title because it wasn't mine. And so it's okay, well, that's nice to know. But because I squashed that piece of information out of my brain for so long, I still can't look at it and go, make that a big deal. It's okay.
Wow.
So I still don't see it as something, but everybody else does. And my friends are they just want to clobber me because I don't beef it up. I don't talk it up enough.
From my perspective, right? A middle-aged white guy, and I feel a ton of pressure day in and day out just with things I have to do in life to support a family. But you are trailblazing. You're yeah, whatever. I'll just keep going.
Well, it's interesting to be a pioneer.
Yeah.
I don't know how to put that. It's interesting to be a pioneer because folks are constantly insinuating that you have no business there. And yet you're supposed to just ignore that and continue on and learn and study and memorize everything that everybody else has to go through, but you have that little extra backpack that says you have to prove yourself. Why are you here?
Okay, you're sitting in VT2, you're a student, like you have that feeling like, hey, I don't belong. Like, how does that transpire in person? Like, what does that look like? What was your experience with that?
Well, I think it really does have to do with my background and my upbringing. I grew up in an integrated neighborhood and I went to a predominantly white school. So I am not like, these are my people. The fact that they look at me and they don't like me, it's like, that's a strange one to me, but it's like, these are my people. I understand them completely. I could ignore folks that were just kind of grumpy because that's all on them. It has nothing to do with me. But when you're studying and you're working hard in order to achieve a goal, you really can't let any of that nonsense trip you up and get in your way. And I want to say that, I don't know how to say it. Instructors were the ones that were probably the most difficult.
Yeah.
And then for all students, you had to know what that instructor's thing was. And so it's nice to have a pipeline of folks that go, okay, when you go to this instructor, you better know blah, blah, blah. Or this instructor is going to try to trip you up. And these are the areas that they're going to try to get you on. And this is what you need to do for that. It's like having a mentor. You can't do this by yourself. You can't learn everything by yourself. But it allowed me to study and train to the best of my ability what I needed to know and not be distracted by things that have nothing to do with this career that I'm choosing because I only got one chance at it.
Yeah.
So I could not let people just push me around and make decisions. So this is unfair to other people, but because I was unique, the senior folks, the base commanders and all that, they knew that I was there.
Mm-hmm.
And so the instructors would give me a fair shake, whether they wanted to or not. It was, fair. And I mean, they really had to, if they did something or I did something wrong, they could easily prove it. They didn't, it wasn't some kind of secret handshake or head nod. So I kind of felt, though, I didn't know that at the time, but I kind of feel as though I was protected at the time that I could fail on my own. I did not have to have somebody put their foot out and have me trip. I could fail on my own with freely. I could freely fail on my own if that's where I was going.
Yeah, gosh. So did you have any struggles when you were there? Was like formation difficult or like instruments or any of that stuff?
No, I think not until I got to Corpus and I was flying the T-44, the cross-country stuff. The navigation was more difficult for me. But while I was at Whiting, well, when I came back, I was a formation instructor. I love that. And teaching night flights and all that kind of stuff. I love that stuff. But yeah, and I tell people, even today, I'm a flight instructor, and I tell them I'm a straight and level kind of girl. So guess who hates acrobatics?
Oh, yeah.
But I flew acrobatics, and I tell folks about how this works. You do something that you don't like doing, and you practice it to perfection. So when you are doing something you don't like to do, it doesn't matter. You're going to do it so well that there's no issue about flying something, flying upside down, doing spins. I mean, I had to teach spins, and I had to save the student from a spin that went wrong, whenever they would do it. And I hated spins, but I knew how to do it so well that, I mean, that's what an instructor's job is. You let somebody go until you get to the point where it's like, okay, you're not going to be able to save yourself. Let me fix this.
Yeah.
One of those kind of things. And that's what being an instructor is. But when I was in waiting, I didn't feel as though I was falling behind. I was studying really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Just sitting reflecting, I'm sure I could go get my logbook and you can go get your logbook, and we flew the same aircraft. Like, that's also what I love about waiting.
Yeah.
Gosh, and I feel so lucky to sit in the same aircraft as you. That's awesome.
Well, I love the students. When I was a flight instructor, you would know this. When the student came to the brief, they were prepared.
Man, yeah.
There was no coddling the students. You didn't have to beg them to study because they knew that this was their life. If they failed, they only had 3 opportunities to fail, and then they'd be out of there anyway.
Yeah.
So they were really up on their training. And so if I talk to a student, we go through the brief, I tell them everything I want them to do. It kind of eliminates the mistakes that I'm used to seeing. So if they do what everybody else did and do the same mistakes that everybody else did, they get an average.
That's right.
If they listen to everything that I said and they actually did what I said, that was definitely an above average. And if they did anything to surprise me, that was below average.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly, I feel the same way. It translates very well. So let's fast forward a little bit. Like when you got to your squadron, what was your first squadron? What were you flying? And what was your reception when you got there?
The reception was actually quite great. And I went to fly CODs, C1s out of Norfolk. And when I first got that job, I was like, oh, I'm flying CODs. What is that?
That's right.
Oh, and everyone's like, oh. They're sending you to a girl squadron. It wasn't a girl squadron. It was just a squadron that was not, what do you call it? It wasn't a defense kind of squadron. At least that's what they called it. And they needed something that women can go into and still go up the chain of command. Because if you get to a certain point, you can't even hold command if you don't have something under your belt. So they had to create something called force support. So anyway, I went to fly CODs, and I was the second woman in the Navy to qualify on CODs.
No kidding.
The first one was in my squadron, so that made me the first Black woman to land on aircraft carriers, and I did that for 3 years.
Man.
So, I enjoyed that, but that was my first squadron.
So there were 2 women in your squadron?
I'm trying to think if we had more. Eventually, we had more women in the squadron, but when I got there was only one other pilot.
Gosh. And so how long did you stay in the Navy? 13
years, full-time active duty. And then I did, reserve and correspondence after that to get my 20.
All right. At 13 years, right, you were already probably lieutenant commander. And
yes,
that's a big decision to get out because you've already made it to the point where, hey, I can retire if I want, but I got to stay another 7 years. Why did you decide to leave at 13?
Because it looks as though in the military, that's about a crossover point where you start getting more management leadership positions. I don't mind being a leader, but I don't want to take me out of the cockpit in order to do it. And that's about the time you start rolling into thinking about admiral's aid in school or whatever place that they're going to put you where there's no stick and rudder. So I was like, and all my friends had already gotten out. They got out at the first opportunity, Brenda, you need to come out to the airlines. I'm like, I'm having a good time. I'm going to stay right here, get good at what I'm doing. And that helped me because now I get the opportunity to improve my skills, get my flight time and stuff like that. So when I go to the airlines, I have something to back me up. I wasn't competing with everybody else. I had a lot more going on. But at the time, I'm thinking, as long as I'm having fun, I'm just going to go ahead and continue to stay here. And I jumped from squadron to squadron to squadron. I flew 7 different airplanes just in the Navy alone. And each one of the squadrons was awesome. And the people were great.
Yeah, that's what keeps me here is that brotherhood, sisterhood, the fraternity part of what we do in the Navy. Everything you say, even though it happened many moons ago, exactly still happens today.
Yes.
And that's the really cool part. And your experience is shared with thousands of others, but you are the bellwether as well. Like at some point, right, in my head, it's like, hey, first. But at some point you're just like, hey, I'm just a pilot. I'm just an aviator. Like I'm just still going up the chain, but everything you do is first. So it blows my mind to think. Also, it blows my mind to think that it's recent history. It's not like it's.
I know.
I mean, you're a couple years older than me, and barely, and it's still I feel like I shouldn't be able to talk to that person that's living the first African American woman. Right?
I ask people. I go thinking about this, and I think back. Did you know when I was 13 years old? Why would you figure that I would be the first to come along? Why did you wait for me to come along to be the first? It's like you've had all of history to get this done, and yet is when I came along that this is the first opportunity. So it just boggles my mind. And I'm not the first Black woman pilot, so it's crazy that the law just wouldn't let them open the doors until about the time that I was perfectly right place, right time, and I went in with the background that I needed.
Have you seen that movie Devotion yet?
No, I have not.
Devotion's about Jesse Brown. Do you know Jesse? Do you know who he was?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So first African-American naval aviator.
Yes.
And they just recently put a movie out about him, and it's fantastic. And I wonder, when they make your movie, like, who's going to play you?
You know, I'm really bad with actresses because I have her all pictured out. I know the cute one that I want to play me. You know, it's like I was pretty ordinary looking, so I'm not, you know, not the cute thing, but you know, I have this all figured out. But nobody's done that.
Listen, I'm sure there's some movie producers that are also pilots that are listening to this podcast, and so send me an email, and I'll set you up with Brenda, and we will get this thing on the road. This would be super fun.
Yeah.
All right. So right now, talk me through, give me a glimpse at what you did after you left active duty. Like, what path did you go down?
Active duty, then I interviewed for 3 airlines. You know, I figured I don't have to go to everybody. I'm just going to go to 3 airlines: United, Delta, and American. And that's it.
Good choice.
I interviewed with all of them, had some pretty good interviews, had some drama, I will admit. Some weird stuff happened.
Like what?
Well, like, oh man. Oh, I don't want to talk about it, but some folks decided that they were going to make an example of me and try to make sure that I did not get a job with the airlines. They worked really hard on it. And after I did an interview at one of the airlines, they go, as a matter of fact, I was having such a great time with the interviewer. He's like, oh, you're so great. I can't wait. He says, I'm not allowed to say this, but I really cannot wait to see you on the flight line because I know that you're going to be a part of it. I mean, you know, it's like we got along fine. It's like, this is not rocket science. It really wasn't. But apparently some letters got written and the recruiters all talked to each other. The airline recruiters, they talked to each other. So I found from a different airline that this letter had been sent around. And the airline that I had know that I was going to be picked up from, they stopped sending information and they no longer wanted to have anything to do with me. So that was a disappointment. It started to delay how I was planning my life. And that came from the Navy. It's a disappointment. And it happens. It happened to other folks in my squadron. So it wasn't just cute me. It was like just nastiness. And you still have to deal with that. Just because when someone is insecure in their own selves, they feel as though their only happiness that they have is to create chaos in somebody else's life. So the 3rd airline, and it wasn't my 3rd choice. It was just the 3rd airline that didn't get all of that. They didn't have those connections. We don't know what you're talking about, but you had already been hired. You know, they said to me, you've already been hired. And I go, no, that didn't happen. And here's the story. And they go, can you start next week? I was like, yes. So I ended up starting at American Airlines right away. They just knew that I was already hired, so they didn't bother to send me a letter.
Oh, man. Thank goodness. Listen, I want you to tell me that person's name. Like, I hate that so much.
I'm not the only one that's happened to, but I realized that, you have to watch your back all the time. So,
but you shouldn't. That's the bull crap part. Oh, man, that is so maddening.
And see, I just saved all their butts because I wasn't going to mention names or where they came from or anything like that. I just thought that it's important to understand that other folks have their own problems. They're not my problems.
Man.
They're their problems.
It's right. It is their problem.
And sometimes you do have to have an advocate. That I wouldn't have known about it if the airline, airlines don't tell you anything. If they don't accept you, you just never hear. They ghost you. You never hear from them again. In this case, they just thought that it was so lousy that they made me aware of it.
Yeah, that's terrible. And I'm so sorry that happened. And I'd like to think things like that don't happen anymore. Just can't say that they don't. And so I'm sorry that you had to go through that.
Not a bad story, but this is a story. A young lady that I met in Pensacola was going through an FO school. And I met her, but then I realized that she was having any difficulty until she was almost being kicked out. So I became her mentor and I talked her through stuff because I don't know what she has to study. I don't know what she has to learn or her procedures or anything like that. I'm totally disconnected from what's going on in the Navy. So what I found out is that she was focusing too much on things that didn't matter, that maybe were going on around her, chaos, drama going on around her, when she should have been focusing on her studies and getting help on procedures and motor memory as far as your work, your memorization. You have to have that, like the back of your hand. You have to know your procedures. So you don't have time to sit around worrying about some knucklehead and all the things that they're doing. And once I got a hold of her and I started to get her back on track, she graduated, got her wings with raging colors. I mean, she was amazing. I went to her first winging I'd been to since my own, so we're talking about 30, 40 years later. And she's done phenomenal because I had to distract her from stuff that she should not have been paying attention to.
I love that. First, I want to say I love the fact that you are still mentoring, right? Like you are still part of that and still encouraging and still keeping people moving forward.
Yes, that's exactly it.
It seems, that you just don't stay still. And that has an effect on the people around you.
Yeah.
And I love that. I want to know your organization, right? Aviation Camps of the Carolinas. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to me just a little bit about that? Because it just translates so well to like how you reach out and how you help and how you're always lifting.
I was very fortunate that in my high school, very good high school in the Montgomery County area, and I went to an airport for half a day in my senior year. And that's how I got that trip to Philadelphia or to the air traffic control tower. And I based my aviation camp on that control tower visit. First of all, teenagers are on the go. You want me to know something? You better be able to spit it out in 10 minutes. That's as long as I'm going to be listening to you on it. I can tell immediately if I'm interested in it or not. So you don't need to go on and on and on. You don't have to sit me in a chair all day and bark at me. So I take the kids to an airport. And the one thing I want them to see is the air traffic control tower. I don't get to do that all the time. But that's what got my foot in the door with aviation, because I didn't even know that it existed. I didn't know there was such thing as air traffic control. The kids that I bring together with my camp, they don't know that there's such thing as aircraft maintenance. They don't know about the medevacs and how cool that is, where they come from, who gets to choose. I have a police helicopter that flies into all of my camps and talks about their radar and how they can see people in the dark, how they find people that are lost and stuff like that. I was like, this is like the coolest thing. And so the kids, their eyes are all bugging out. I got an F-18 pilot to fly into Charlotte one year for my camp. And I thought the kids were going to come out of their skin. When are we going to see the F-18 pilot? And he flew his big old jet in there and they got to take pictures with the instructor and the student under the wing of the F-18. This is such cool stuff. And I do it all in one day. So they come to my camp and they see like about 8 different aviation professions because me as a pilot, I can't do my job at all. All those other job descriptions are being filled. So they truly enjoy that. And so I try to that's what my camp is, hands-on at an airport. And I also am a counselor for the Aviation Merit Badge for the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts. They can get their Aviation Merit Badge in one day because we see and do all the recommended items on their manual. We get it all done in one day. So we're moving. We get these kids on the bus, off the bus, wherever they're going to next. And they love it because everything is in fast motion. The adults are like, can't you just sit still for 2 hours? It's like, no, this is not for you. This is not your camp. Right. Thank you for volunteering and helping out, but this is not your camp. This is their camp. And when I was a teenager, that's what I wanted. Show me something and let's move on and let me think about it. And that's another thing. Adults don't notice that kids are thinking. They see something, they act nonchalant about it. It's not that big of a deal. Let me go get my cell phone and play with that for a minute. You show it to them and they have assimilated and they're thinking that one over. And I can't tell you how many kids, they just tell me stuff at the end of the camp that I didn't know they heard. I talk about confidence a lot, and I want to teach them confidence because they think that they have to grow into it. So do their parents. So did my parents. So I just teach them stuff that they can use every day. And it just makes them feel better. And they use that for the aviation. I'm like, how are you going to go for your interview if you're not confident? And I'm shy.
That's right.
I'm quiet and I'm an introvert. And I say I am because I never changed. It took me until I was in my 30s to realize that I should probably fix this.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I pretend I'm an actor in my own life, and it's actually quite enjoyable.
That's absolutely stunning. So what would you say a lot of what we talk about with my organization, Spitfire, is about people's why? and why they do and why they are and what they are all about. So what would you say your why is?
My why, I wrote a book just for teenagers because it is kind of like, why didn't you tell me this when I was a teenager? My life would have been so much better. So, of course, I just ruin the mystique and I tell people that I am a time traveler. So I wrote a book at the age of 35. I went back in time and gave it to the 13-year-old me. Now, fast forward throughout my life, here I am, a total success. I was like, what did I do? What was so different? And confidence building was a big part of it. Plus being ahead of time, my favorite saying, the latest I will be is on time. That's a Navy saying. But I like the Marines better. That's like, if you're on time, you're late.
That's right.
So
my wife can't handle it.
Yeah.
It drives her nuts.
Well, that's good. That's good. It's all of those little things that you don't have common sense unless you've actually lived through something. So a parent will tell your child, don't you have any common sense? It's like, I've never seen this before and I reacted to the best way possible. It was all wrong, but I acted that way, And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give them common sense stuff that you're going to see and how to react, because it's your dignity that's intact when you react correctly to a situation, even if it's a bad situation. How do you react to that? How do you get up and stand up after you run into a situation? And you're always going to run into some sort of brick wall or something. It's me. I want to blab all that inside information out to people that can use it now, this minute, when I tell it to them, and they can use it for the rest of their life.
Yeah. That's so interesting. So as you're in the mix and you're in the thick of it and you're shepherding and you're seeing with the children today that you are working with that are our future, right? Like, what glass ceilings do you see that still exist, that still need to be broken?
That is interesting and tough. And it's still the same as I noticed, is that if you let other folks who have a problem with you, and that's usually where you get it first, you can tell just by body language if somebody is very unhappy. But you have to remember that that's their problem. That has nothing to do with you. And nothing would make them happier than to see you disintegrate under the weight of their complaints or their problems. So just like in the past, in the future, you have to do your own thing and realize or recognize when you see someone who is actually not trying to help you, but trying to figure out a way to take you down or bring you down. And once you understand that and you can see it, it's not a surprise to you, and you can go on about your business. So I don't see a glass ceiling, but what I do see is I wanted to take my hands like this. I want you to step on this so I can hoist you up so you can do more than I've done. Whereas a lot of folks have come to me, Brenda, you're in aviation. Oh, you're going into the airlines. Oh, you should be an astronaut. I'm like, leave that up to somebody else. I've already done the stuff that I feel like doing, and I'm real happy where I am. But let me give you a hand up, send anybody my way. Hand up so you can leap on to other things and do things. So if what I have achieved in the past is a good starting part, then I will encourage you to move on and up, because there are no limitations and barriers unless it is legal, something that's written in the law. And they've had to take all of that stuff out. People are grumpy. There's some frowny faces, but they've had to take some of those things out. And so now we have to demand whatever our next step is. Things that happen behind the scenes that I can't do anything about, we have to try to figure out a way around that. Mentors are always best. Mentors and coaches. Mentors are the folks that have already done what you're doing. They even wrote a book about it. Nobody read it, but they wrote a book about it, exactly what you're getting ready to go through. So they could tell you all the secrets. So when you run into this same problem, because if it were easy, anybody could do it. You run into the same problem that everybody else did. They know exactly how they got around it over to do it. And coaches are the same way. They know what you're going to have to deal with. They help you through these things. I say everybody should have a mentor. I think that would be great. And that's how you get around even glass ceilings. That's how you get around that, because you're going to have to find somebody that knows what you're getting ready to go through, because it has been done before.
Yes, absolutely. So I have 5 kids. I have 2 little girls, and one is 9 and one is 5. And listen, I cannot wait for them to just sit and listen to you, because I want them to have that understanding, that knowledge,
Yes.
not the feeling, the knowledge that they are worthy and they are great and they can do it and they can crush it and they deserve to be there.
Right. Exactly.
And that's it. All of it. Gosh, this is so good.
I wrote that in my book to teenagers. I don't mention it all that often. It's kind of like I still have a teenage brain. And I'd say that to them, nobody's better than me, but I'm not better than anybody. So
You're better than me. You did a lot more work than I did.
Accomplishments, maybe. There's things out here that other people have accomplished that it's like, I'm looking at them, even those young folks coming up. I'm like, wow, you guys are smart. I wish I was that smart when I was taking calculus in college. Oh my God, that hurt so much. Yeah. I was like, there's some really brilliant young people out there. So I give them all that credit.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, Brenda, thank you for spending time with me. Thank you for spending time with the pilot that's listening, that's getting the value out of your words and the inspiration, because you are. And I'm going to put a link to Aviation Camps at the Carolinas for all the parents that want to get their kids involved, for the kids that are listening, happen to be lucky enough to live around Charlotte.
They always have a good time. Yeah.
They do. And you have such a big heart. And I appreciate you pivoting and sitting down with me for an hour. I mean, you're very gracious and very giving. So thank you for all of that.
I appreciate it.
I hope it's a smashing success as you get moving again. We're rolling right back into the end of the school year. So thank you so much for spending time. And thank you for being a groundbreaker and a person that is just with great confidence and so giving. So thank you for all you do. And thank you for being here.
Thanks so much, Nick. Thank you for inviting me. It gave me an opportunity to think about my Navy years and looking at your flight suit the whole time. And I'm like, this is so exciting. And I wear my flight suit at camps. The person that wasn't going in the military, there's no way you're going to get me in the military. Yeah, I wear that all the time.
That's right. Same thing with me. I probably shouldn't even be here. All right, Brenda, thank you so much. You're awesome.
All right, take care.
Hey, before you jump out of here and go on to the next podcast, can I ask a big favor? Would you mind going over to your app that you're listening to this podcast on and give me a review? Give me a 5-star review if you love it. Give me a 1-star review if it totally sucks. Put a comment in there, something that is helpful. It helps me. It helps get the word out there. It helps people find the podcast, and that's super cool. If you don't do that, maybe you could just share the podcast with a friend. Tell a buddy who's trying to figure it out, trying to sort out this pilot dream of theirs and get a little bit further. That is super awesome as well. Last, if you don't do either of those two things, how about this? Find a way today to make yourself 1% better. Do that thing that you've been putting off. Put your foot forward, make movement, get yourself going, get that inertia that you need to succeed in this industry. So that's your choice. Leave a review, tell a friend, or make yourself better. Either way, it's all a good choice. And I'm super stoked you're listening, and I will see you on the next episode. The statements made on this show are my own opinions and do not reflect, nor are they under any direction from my employer.